Alright, Sean, Katie, Sean. God, Netflix is just bringing every single thing out at the minute, aren't they? If it's not documentaries, it's films. If it's not films, it's flipping returning series. It's just everything. Oh! Anyway, you ever heard of anyone called the Zodiac?
Just a little bit.
Quite an infamous serial killer. Infamous in America. Can't remember what decade. I imagine it's something like the 60s.
I don't know.
I think it was the 60s. It's not. I know for 100%. It's not Jack the Ripper time, as in the 1900s, and it's not like 90s. I'm sure it's the 60s. But quite famous, and because serial killer documentaries and whatnot, and shows and programs seem to be the in thing now. Maybe we'll react to this and see what we can.
Yeah. Do you know much about the Zodiac Killer?
I know there's a lot of contention about who he actually killed.
Right.
You know how, like, with Jack the Ripper, there's like 8 potential victims, but 5 confirmed victims. I'm pretty sure it's the same with the Zodiac.
Okay.
There's suspected killings and then confirmed killings because he also wrote to the police.
I knew that. I don't know much about the Zodiac Killer. I know he wrote stuff to the police. I don't really know.
I also know loads of people for some reason come out and claim to be him.
Why would you want to do that?
It's fame, isn't it? Well, is it fame or is it infamy?
I'm sure I might remember stuff if it brings it up in this. But I don't really know much about the Zodiac Killer.
The only stuff I know from the Zodiac Killer is from the film Zodiac, made by David Fincher, which is really good. Robert Downey Jr., Jake Gyllenhaal.
I don't think I ever watched that.
No, it's really good. Mark Ruffalo. Yeah, let's watch.
I called Mr. Allen. I'm thinking in my mind, okay, here we go. Mr. Allen, were you the Zodiac?
San Francisco has a killer in its midst.
He had this black hood on, little slits in the eyes.
He goes around killing people by rope, by gun, by knife. And he says, I'm going to call myself Zodiac.
American law enforcement had never seen anything like this.
It turned into a public obsession. The TV shows, the books, the movie.
I want you to print this cipher on your front page.
Zodiac was different. He got away with it. You don't want to believe the worst in someone you trust your kids with.
Was this code, wasn't it? It cracked the
I
code.
thought there's no way that it could be him.
My sister and my brother's lives were molded by him. I had no idea how much my mother kept us out of the loop.
We started connecting the dots.
We realized we had been to all the murder sites before the murders.
Did they actually? Have they recently caught him?
Close to you that can lie so easy.
Mr. Allen paid different attention to the girls.
I mean, he was my hero.
We were determined to find out the truth.
I'm not good at puzzle solving, but I don't give up.
The families of the victims should know. They have to know the whole story.
I really thought I knew him, but I didn't.
This is the Zodiac speaking.
So it says in here, since the Zodiac Killer has never been officially identified, it cannot be said that for certain if they're still alive. But it says, how did they find out that Gary Post is Zodiac? It says, in 2021, a civilian volunteer group called the Case Breakers announced they had identified Gary Francis Post as the elusive Zodiac Killer through a combination of evidence involving shell cartridges, photos, fingerprints, cryptic writings, and DNA harvested from his old clothing and a blood relative.
But when was that, in 2021?
But then it does, yeah. But then it does say during the 1990s, several investigators claimed to have identified the Zodiac Killer. The suspect most often cited was Arthur Lee Allen, which was who they were talking about there. Vallejo, California school teacher who had been institutionalized in 1975 for child molestation, though his identification with the Zodiac has never been confirmed.
So he died in 1992.
Oh, yeah, I think he's famous, isn't he? Because the Zodiac Killer's famous because a lot like Jack the Ripper and another killer, but it doesn't really apply to him anymore, he was never caught. The BTK killer was never caught either, but he came out years after he stopped to dispute a book that said he'd had either been arrested or had died. So obviously he was caught. Yeah, there was a cipher. There was, well, I think there was a few ciphers that were sent to newspapers. That were sent to the police as well. But I think I might be wrong. But there's a geezer who says he likes puzzles. It's not him. He's like a flat cap.
Yeah, not him. I think it was earlier on.
Him. So I think I might be completely wrong here, but the character in the film Zodiac is like a graphic novelist who writes like cartoons and stuff for the newspaper that the cipher gets sent to, and it's him that actually cracks it. Thinks he cracks it. Because as far as people know, it was just a bunch of gibberish, wasn't it? Although it probably wasn't. Again, I need to start saying this right at the beginning. We don't know everything about this. We don't know everything about... I mean, I know Criminal Minds. So, you know, when I say Criminal Minds...
I know from Criminal Minds.
When I say Criminal Minds, I don't mean I know generally the Criminal Minds.
I mean
the show Criminal Minds. So I know what certain things mean. I think one of the most baffling things about the Zodiac Killer was that he didn't use a specific weapon. He used a gun, knife, and a rope.
I said that, didn't it? Yeah,
and normally, the murder weapon's quite telling on motivation and things, isn't it? Can you imagine how flubbering scary that would be? No. I know there was one definitely where there was a couple underneath a tree or something, and he tied them both up under the pretense that he was going to rob them, and then he killed them. And it was... But yeah, don't they normally say... What is it they normally say? The gun... They say poison's a woman's weapon. That's what that phrase is, which is... I know it's a sexist thing, but generally they say poison's a woman's weapon. Gun... Is that not meant to be dead, like a professional? Efficient. It's an efficient way of killing someone, isn't it? Knife.
I know knife is like personal, isn't it?
Yeah, knife is personal. It's also substitution for sex, which is that's gross. Well, what a rope for? What a rope is? I'd say that I know.
Sadistic? I would say it's pretty sadistic.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Strangling someone's dying slowly, aren't they?
Yeah. Drowning someone sometimes is seen as a cleansing.
Are you really going for it, aren't you? I don't know. I think the thing is, it's interesting that... It's interesting, isn't it? Because you would just think, and I think a lot of people assume the same thing, is that, you know, he's a killer, he's a serial killer, he's killed all these people. How could he just stop? You know what I mean? And that's like the interesting thing of like, what happened to him? Did he die? Did he just... like... I don't know. It's interesting because they're making it seem like it is that Allen guy.
Yeah.
But if that was disproven, or if they never really had the proof, it's interesting that they would incriminate him. I know he's dead, but it seems if it wasn't actually him, it's in poor taste. I think.
But it's a backup, isn't it? Backup. It almost backs itself up because he was institutionalized in 75, which is these are probably saying supposedly that's when the Zodiac stopped.
Right.
And if they're then saying that he was taking them all to the places where people were getting killed, he was also a child molester, then it's kind of... It doesn't sound all that great of a person anyway.
And I'm not saying that.
But it's also not great if he isn't the Zodiac Killer, because that means that the actual Zodiac Killer has...
Yeah, so when did the Zodiac killings happen?
I think the 60s. I think it was 60s San Francisco.
Right.
Should I Google?
You can use my phone if you want to use my phone.
I know, but your phone's charging. I think it was 60s. When did Zodiac Killer start?
69.
Zodiac Killer, unidentified American serial killer who is believed to have murdered at least 5 people in Northern California between 1968 and 1969. An earlier murder, the stabbing death of an 18-year-old college student in Riverside, 66, is also sometimes attributed to the Zodiac.
They don't actually know.
Nope.
It's interesting that they never caught him though, isn't it? Especially because you think, like, because we talked about before, the likes of Jack the Ripper, that happened so long ago. It makes sense because they didn't have things then that they have now.
Yeah.
Even in the 60s, you'd feel like they would have a better way, like they would still be able to catch him.
Oh yeah. Well, forensic evidence would probably have come a long way compared to, say, Jack the Ripper, but they still weren't all that sophisticated in terms of...
Yeah.
It seems like a killer like this would be hard to catch even nowadays because he has no specific murder weapon, there's no specific type. You know, he's elusive. He's coming up with his own ciphers. He's got forensic countermeasures, so he's you know, it's hard to identify. If it's even a he, we don't even know that it's a he. I assume it's a he. We're assuming it's a he.
They always made it seem like it was a he, didn't
Yeah. I mean, there's no gender in Zodiac Killer, but from everything that I've seen, the indication is always that it's a man. God, that would be a great bluff, wouldn't it? Imagine if it was a woman.
I mean, if it was a tall enough lass and could just...
Quite athletic.
Yeah.
I imagine she would have to be athletic if she was going to strangle someone to death.
Probably.
Depending on the circumstances, if they're tied up and everything, what can they do?
You could they could make themselves look a bit manly, couldn't they?
Yeah.
In like terms of like make themselves look a bit more muscular.
Like the way they hold themselves, yeah.
If they had like boobs, they could like strap them so that it's
even
less
something
prominent.
like that. If you imagine a costume like that, like the shoulders there, don't necessarily have to be, you know, squared shoulders. If you're wearing a costume that automatically makes you look like you've got square shoulders. That's what I mean. Like, it's really quite forensically sophisticated. I wonder if it was purpose, if it was deliberate or not. Yeah,
you'd think so.
Yeah, it's clever either way. And then you get to the ciphers where you're kind of like, you know, like what do you do at that point? I have to say the Zodiac film is a brilliant film.
Is it?
It's a really good film. Because it's not so much about the killer as it is about the impact. Like what they were saying, where it's become like a countrywide sort of thing where people are suspecting the neighbours and stuff, you know, no one knows.
Yeah.
And it's about the three characters trying to catch him and just almost losing their mind just trying to catch the guy, you know.
It would be difficult, wouldn't it? Like, you've got these killings happening and you just feel like you can't help. It's just, it makes it seem like, well, because when I was watching this, like this trailer, it was like, oh, it's him. It makes it seem like they all think it's him.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they would go down that route.
Yeah, strange.
I suppose they could just say, well, we don't actually know if it was him or not, but
that's
he
the
was
thing,
he was still a
isn't it?
horrible guy.
Yeah.
Which is true in itself, but to say that he is the Zodiac Killer, I think, is a bit like...
It's a bit of a leap.
Don't know. Especially if in 2021 they've turned around and been like, oh, actually we think it's this person because of all this, you know, forensic evidence and stuff.
Yeah. But it's bad for... Because on the surface, in a very basic one-dimensional way, people go, well, he obviously wasn't a nice guy, so we don't care about upsetting his memory or whatever.
Yeah.
But in a much more multi-dimensional way, what you're doing is you're essentially going, the person who was actually the Zodiac Killer has completely gotten away with it. Although
he has gotten
more than likely he already has, yeah. But any slim, tiny chance people have of actually catching the person that it was, or proving that it was this specific person, is gone as soon as you start saying this man was definitively the Zodiac Killer.
If he's even still alive, I mean, the Zodiac Killer might not be still alive, but...
I know. Well, I think, if I'm remembering the film correctly, or maybe it was Criminal Minds, I think they said something like it would be in his 30s to 40s, which means that this day and age it would be, what, 100?
He's probably dead.
Yeah. Either way, if a miracle came about where he was still alive, it's not like he's going to go to prison for what he did. You know, they're not going to put a 100-year-old man in prison.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't with, what's his name, did they? Jimmy Snooker. said he couldn't even stand trial. He was found guilty, but he never went to prison.
I know, but it's America, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
Americans.
It's true, yeah.
It's
different laws and stuff
yeah.
in America, isn't it? They also do things like they don't they still give life sentences
In America, pretty sure they do.
And they give like multiple life sentences and stuff, don't they? Like in this country, if someone says you're getting a life sentence, it's 25 years.
Usually, yeah.
And the majority of the time you get out before that. But in America, they can get like 4 life sentences or something, can't they?
I think so, yeah.
We're talking like we're ever gonna know.
Maybe. You'd think they would just like, it's horrible to say. I think it's horrible to say anyway, but like just put them to death.
Yeah. Well, I think I said put him in prison.
No, I put him in prison. But they would just be like, if he's 100 and something, he's been found guilty of killing them. They have death sentences in America. They would probably just say,
yeah. If the Zodiac had ever been caught, he probably most likely would have been put to death. But
I mean, now
they
if he was still alive.
No, they probably wouldn't.
Do you think there's still people like actively investigating it, trying to figure it out?
Well, according to that thing we read, there was a group of people who went out and investigated it. It's the not knowing, isn't it, that drives people up the wall. I just think it's the same with Jack the Ripper, even though that was over 100 years ago. It's just not knowing.
I just couldn't imagine being like the policemen that are trying to find him, and you'd feel helpless, wouldn't you? Like these families and wanting justice, and you just feel like you just can't catch this person. It'd be so frustrating.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna watch the film again now. It's a really good film. But yeah, that's essentially what happens. These people are like so desperate to catch this person. There's a few times where they go and like they might talk to someone. And it gives off the impression that this person might be the Zodiac Killer, and it is proper tense and creepy. Like, proper creepy. Because I'm pretty sure it's David Fincher who's the guy who did Seven. So it's like...
Right.
So you remember how creepy Seven was. And this is the same. So there's like this guy where a guy goes into this guy's basement to try and find a certain piece of evidence that he thinks he might have. And he's talking to this geezer, and then the guy's just following him around this thing, looking at him, and it's like... You're sitting there going... Get out of the house. Just get out of the house. It's a really good film, though. But
it's worth us watching, but...
It's completely understandable, though, isn't it? Why something like that would drive you... Like, up the bend, because...
Yeah.
He's arguably America's most famous serial killer, isn't he? Like, there are other ones who are arguably as famous just because they were caught.
I think, everyone knows. You say Zodiac Killer, and everyone knows of the Zodiac, don't they? It's like even like me, if you didn't know the ins and outs of everything that had happened, I still knew who the Zodiac Killer was. I still knew he sent stuff to the place. So yeah, it's
something that I will give to the Americans. I don't normally give the Americans much credit, especially when it comes to language, but the Zodiac Killer seems a lot more refined than some of the names we have for our killers. There are some American serial killers who sound scary when you hear their sort of nicknames, like the Son of Sam sounds scary, the Manson family sounds scary, but let's face it, nothing is as scary as Jack the Ripper, the Yorkshire Ripper, Dr. Death. It's like, just shut up. I'm never going to trust anyone. The Rippers and things like that, that's just awful.
But it was to what was happening to them.
Yeah.
It's like you can understand why that was the case, but that's why they say like to not. Because you would just cause fear, wouldn't you?
What was the other one?
Into people.
I don't know that. I can't think of John Wayne Gacy or anything had nicknames, but like that's scary, isn't it? A guy who dresses up as a clown is that's horrifying. Yeah. So yeah, I'll give the Americans the benefit of the doubt on the naming of their serial killers. It's a bit more refined.
Jack the Ripper, the Yorkshire Ripper.
Yeah.
God, you just wouldn't leave the house, would you?
Nah. It's probably it's what it does, isn't it? It causes panic.
Yeah. Even though, like, I think you would still be afraid of like the Zodiac and stuff, especially with sending stuff to the police and taunting them. And
I wonder if geographically it's significant as well, because one of the big ones with Son of Sam is that it was in New York, so it was just, it's this big urban city that's just been terrorized by a man with a gun. But I don't particularly know like California, like, is it city based? Florida wasn't too. Is Florida in California?
no, Florida's in the East Coast. I'm sure it is.
I don't know
isn't it?
America. But
I mean,
you know
San
what I mean?
Francisco is a city.
San Francisco is a city. But
Yeah.
Is all of California like that?
I'm sure there's probably bits of it that's not. I know Los Angeles is in California. That's a big city.
Yeah, maybe there's some American people who can explain it to us, because I was just thinking geographically it makes it different for the killers, doesn't it? Like, because
That seemed a bit like suburban. Do you not think? There's loads of like grass and field. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about
American.
the area. But you'd think if it was a city, it would be a bit more like there'd be loads of buildings and it would be like.
Yeah.
But that seemed more like.
There was definitely at least one killing where it was in the middle of a field with just a tree, and it was near like a river or something. So I think it was different to the likes of the Son of Sam, it was just panic, because New York is its own state, isn't it?
I think so.
They call it New York, don't they?
Mhm. I think so.
We're really not making ourselves out to be the smartest people in the world here. Yeah, so we don't know anything about America. Explain some stuff to us, fellow Americans.
But not
I'm not American. Are you American?
No. I think we made that obvious. We didn't know if New York was a state.
God.
I'm sure it is.
I think I've lost about 7 brain cells making this video. Let us know some stuff that maybe we don't know, because, like I say, we don't know everything about these types of thing. But it seems to be they're really grinding down on serial killers at the minute. Netflix, aren't they? They did that. Dahmer. It wasn't a documentary, but it was based on Jeffrey Dahmer, wasn't it? But they did things like the tapes with all the serial killers. Dahmer, it had Quicksilver as him.
Peters. Yeah. I think it has become like a popular thing, hasn't it? Like crime documentaries and them talking about.
It's
like
just
our mother loves crime documentaries.
She says as if she's not the biggest Criminal Minds fan going.
I also really like Criminal Minds. But, I mean, I like them as well, but it's like, it's not just, I think it's something that, like, everyone can find interesting, like, not even...
It's curiosity, isn't it?
Yeah, especially stuff like this, like Zodiac, because they didn't figure it out, you know what I mean? So it's like, it makes you think that, I wonder what the truth is, I wonder what happened, I wonder who it is, if he's still alive or not.
This one for the Criminal Minds. George Foyet is based on the Zodiac.
He wore a mask, didn't he?
It's not just the mask, it's the fact that he gets away with it initially. And
they did an episode
gets away with it again.
On the Zodiac, though.
Yeah.
So.
Where people are coming out claiming to be the Zodiac. Yeah. So not fellow Americans, but Americans in general. Tell us some stuff about maybe the Zodiac that we can look into. Would you like us to say us to? Oh my God, what has happened to us?
You can't talk now, can you?
Let us know if you would like Katie to watch the Zodiac film, because honestly, it's actually a really, really good film. Do you know what it does? It showcases how good of an actor someone like Robert Downey Jr. is. You know how people say he's just a superhero actor? He's actually really good in this. Let us know if that's something you'd like us to watch. If you'd like us to watch this, maybe you'd like us to watch some crime documentaries type stuff. I'm not too sure about that though, because I'm not sure if that's crossing the line or not. But let us know. We'll consider it. Like the video, subscribe, ding the bell, be notified when we upload. We upload every day. Anything else you want to say? God, I've got such an itchy left ear.
Do you think if you were a serial killer, you would have the brains to get away with it?
No. I think I've just proved that in the last 10 minutes.
Because I find it so, and like, I'm trying to think of a way that doesn't make me sound like a weirdo. I find it very fascinating how someone could be so intellectual that they could get away with murder.
It depends.
Especially nowadays.
If you're asking us if I could be a serial killer now without getting caught, absolutely not. There was far too much in the way of like forensics to catch people now. 60s, 70s, if I had the knowledge that I have now and was back then, maybe.
Yeah.
Because the further back you go, the more you're like, absolutely, you could get away with it.
It's just, it's so... Because even for me, like, the 60s, it's not that long ago.
It's kind of long ago.
I know, but in comparison to, like, Jack the Ripper or something like that, it's not that long ago, really, is it? So it's like, it just...
Yeah. I think people who say they could get away with being a serial killer back then, what they mean is they could get away with it back then if they had knowledge. But not if you were living in it. I think it would take someone of quite a good intelligence to get away with it.
Because it's just so, like, insane to think that, like, you could, especially for like the Zodiac Killer. I mean, it's like,
it's coming out soon as well.
Oh yeah. The different weapons and having, like, being able to get around the place, sending the police stuff, but they can't trace it back. Like, that's just very, like, it's quite insane to think about that you could get away with it. I mean, obviously nowadays I feel like you just couldn't.
Yeah.
We'd have to be, like, insanely, like, smart, I think, to get away with it now.
You'd have to be into, like, hacking and you know, being able to turn cameras off remotely and stuff. I doubt it, like, but yeah, I don't think I could. Thank you for watching. Do you?
No.